Hello, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. I'm Matthew Groves, and I'm struggling with my microphone here for a second, but I am ready to go today, and I'm glad you're here. And yeah, we're going to just pick up where I left off on Friday. I'm getting back on track with this project. So I had planned to, let's go back to my list here, just on the screen. So I had planned to, well, I had started a little bit on thinking about update on Friday, update article. But it turns out that I needed to think differently about how my data model works because of that one little requirement. If the title changes, the slug also changes. So the title is an article title, blog post title, whatever. I like balloons. The slug is I-like-balloons some character, random character string, just to give it uniqueness to avoid collisions with other people who also like balloons. But the issue is, I'm using the slug. I was using the slug as the document key, and in Couchbase and in many NoSQL databases, in fact, the key is immutable. So I looked at a couple options for how to deal with that, but I think the best option is what I decided to do, which is just take that random part of that string, make that the key of the article. Then I can have title and slug both in the article as mutable data. And since it's that key is now immutable, and there's no reason for that ever to change, that key can be used in other places in the system, other places in the data model, like the favorites documents, which keep track of which documents or which articles are users' favorites, which would be a huge pain in the neck if those slugs had to change and I use the slugs to keep track of that. But doing it this way, don't have to worry about it at all. It'll just automatically keep working. Those favorites will stay favorites even if the title changes something completely different. So I updated the create article and get article endpoints accordingly. There's a new extension method. I call it like get article key. So this takes in a slug, which I kind of wish it was something a little stronger than string, but I'm not sure what that would be. And you can see all the documentation here for how this works. But it'll take in the slug and it'll get just that little bit at the end of the string, which, by the way, it's using this delimiter right here, : : I just thought it'd make sense to use that instead of just another dash. So this is going to take this XY, 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 X, and that's what it's going to return. And that's the actual going to be used in the document to store the article. So with that in mind, let's get on to the actual endpoint that's going to make those changes, which is the update article endpoint. Let's bring it back to the spec here, the task on my board here, my project management board, which is number 17. So it's going to take in request body, which is not going to just be title, it's going to be other parts as well. So title, description, body is what it can use. Kind of interesting that it can't select, it can't use tags. I would expect it to support tags. Well, maybe I'll just go ahead and add that anyway. So worst case, the front ends will just ignore it, right? But I think it should support tags, changing tags. Anyway, article has title, description, body. They're all optional. I'm going to support tags. But of course, if you don't specify any of them, then it's going to be an error as well. I'm not doing anything. So why are you making this request? And then it's important endpoint here, which is the slug also gets updates. So this is my thought process 4 days ago. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of take this note right here, paste in the comments, just so I don't have conflicting information. Okay, go down further. There we go. Scratch that comment. Here's the approach I'm taking. And I remember we investigated other Couchbase Conduit projects, and I think it was I looked at two. The Node one didn't seem to handle this at all, although I'm not 100% sure. And the Spring one, I wasn't sure either, because it was, I'm less sure with the Spring, because there's a lot of like magic Spring data stuff going on. And I just don't know what the, I don't know enough about Spring. Okay. All right, so let's just add that little comment there. So that's just to, so I have, if I'm not looking at the code, I'm looking at the issues, I can see what the approach was. Okay, so back in articles, I'll get create article, favorite article. I updated that one as well. Also handle the slug. It's still, from the outside, it still looks like the full slug is being used, but in the actual data layer, it's using just that little random extension. There's the get method, so I just need a update. This will need to be, this is, authentication is required for this one. So authorize, right? Is that the endpoint? Yeah, authorize. The same as favorite, also needs to be authorized for that. This is a put, HTTP put. Okay, which is a different verb than what I've used so far. We've not used anything but get, post, and delete. Now we're using put. Okay. Oh, you know what? I think I skipped something in my my list here. Controller testing update. You know, I'll get to that later. We'll get to that later. Maybe we can end the stream with that. Coral with the subscription. Hello, Coral. How are you doing? Haven't seen you in the stream in a while. Happy you could join. And Surly Dev in the house as well. Surly Dev, I got a surprise for you if I need to take a coffee break. Although it's probably not much of a surprise now that I say that. I've fully integrated that video into Streamlabs. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. Still working on this application. So Coral, this might be the first time that you have seen this project I'm working on. This is, I don't know if you've paid attention to my social media or not. If not, totally understandable. But this is the Conduit project, which is part of Real World. Oh, you got to drop off in 20 minutes, so I got to chug this coffee. Well, bad news. I got the big mug today, the dad mug. So I'm not even halfway through this cup. But that's okay. Maybe I'll just demo it and as soon as I get through this explanation. But anyway, so the Conduit project is what I'm working on. This is this is part of the Real World project, or I'm not chugging this coffee. It's part of the Real World project, and what it is a set of specs basically for front end and back end website, and as as long as you implement the specs, you can mix and match these front ends and back ends. Which means that what you can do is, if you want to learn how to use a framework or a front end or a tool or a language, you can come to this website and look up hundreds of different implementations of this spec in different languages, frameworks, front ends, back ends, databases, and compare them, contrast them with one another. And I'm working on an ASP.NET, of course, because that's what I do. I'm a .NET developer, C#, and Couchbase backend. Couchbase being a NoSQL database. Yes, my coffee is amazing. So that's what I'm building. I'm working on the Conduit app, and you can see the progress right here on the GitHub project I'm working on. So based on number of issues, number of items, I'm over halfway done. Although I don't think that's quite true. Some of these are pretty complex endpoints. So that's what I'm working on. Now, before Surly Dev loses his mind, I'm going to throw it over to my taking a break screen. I've not tried this on the public stream yet, so this will be interesting to see if this actually works. So I'll be back in just about 30 seconds. After these messages, we'll be right back. Okay, did that work? Did you hear the sound and everything? That was a clip put together by a surly dev himself, because I was explaining what that graphic was, and I did the little song. I made the little song. So he just took that isolated clip, put it with an animation, and there you go. Coral, I don't know if you are old enough to remember. You're not much younger than me, I don't think. But you remember those from Saturday morning cartoons. They're just burned into my brain for some reason. Those dumb little commercial bumpers. You're plenty old enough. Yes, I agree, but I don't know if you're old enough to remember those particular clips. Believe me, I'm plenty old enough as well. I think the oldness can stop. I've reached a maximum desirable level of oldness. All right, Surly. Well, I know you got to drop off soon, but thanks for dropping in. It's great to see you, and thank you very much for that clip. So there's like a little delay, and then it'll play the clip, and then it'll go back to the static screen, which is exactly what I wanted to do with it. So we're all set there. There's about 6 of them on YouTube. Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a bunch of different variations, but for some reason that like doo-wop one is the one that I remember the most. I'm not going to do all 6 of those. Yes, okay, so you do remember those. Sitting your butt in front of the old CRT. Yeah, yep. I think we had a 19-inch CRT in the living room. I'd watch those in the living room before my parents, before my parents woke up on Saturday morning. Yeah. The cowboy one. Oh. Hey, it's Napalm Codes. Good to see you. The cowboy one, I don't remember exactly, but he has like a little like Western twang to it, like after the message, something like that. You know, it's like, and he does like a little, he ropes a horse or something. I'm not going to sing the whole thing because I know that Surly Dev will immediately clip it. All right, so the route for this is, go back to my spec, it is API article slug. What a great name for that, by the way. Slug. Who can unfollow? No, you can't unfollow me. You're a moderator. Okay, updates and okay. So this is taking the slug, yes, but also it's taking the like updates, article, post model, sure, something like that, and string slug. Actually, not sure if I can integrate that slug into the update article post model. It would kind of be nice if I could. You know, I'm going to try it. The weird thing is, though, I'm getting the slug from the URL and getting the rest from the post body. So, I don't know. Let's find out, shall we? So you create a new view model for articles. Yep. Update article post model. So what I really care about is slug. And I'll put another one in there just to test this out. You know, you think after all these years I would have figured out all the nuances of model binding in ASP.NET Core, but it still eludes me. But, of course, I can still remember dumb bumper jingles from 1980s cartoons. All right. So, I don't know. Return content. Nope, not conflict. Never want to return a conflict. All right. Model.slug and space and model.title. Well, how am I gonna arrange this? Let's see. Yeah, I think this will. I'll take the authorize off for now just to make this easier on me. So I'm just doing some testing right now. So I think Swagger will do all this stuff for me. Articles. Yep, here it is. So we're gonna try it out. Okay, so it's got slug as in 2 places. Okay, well, I guess I really can't do that then. It's got to be bound in 2 places like so, because it's in the URL here. No problem. Okay. Okay, so this should do what? This should go ahead and create a request. There's a new, this is update article request. And that should just take in the model and the slug probably, that's fine. And then mediator dot send request. That's also fine. This should return a response, which I have not created yet. And return, what is it supposed to return? Where's my deal there? Returns the updated article, returns a whole article, okay? The updated version. So this needs to return new, not new, okay, new, and then article equals, how did I do this up here? Article view. Yeah, just the same thing basically. Get response article view, yeah. Why does it get response? Whatever. We'll just do response dot article view. That'll be fine. We're going to let let's just get article request. Does that get the actual? Does it get the actual author in here too? It does. Okay. I hate to kind of duplicate that, but might be the only way to go. I mean, the other option is I could do the update article. If that succeeds, turn around and just do a get article request. And just do that. Would that be any worse? Let me see. Let's see. Can I get the response? This is getting slug and username. Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. Yeah, just like that. And then I have to get the username from claims, like so. And then username is claims.username value. Like that. Okay, so this part here is just going to be return the updated article. So this is going to be update the article, like so. And there could be an error with the response, right? So possibly it could be is not found, right? That's a possibility. Return not found. Article not found. There could be validation errors. Something like this. Right, if I specify a title is too short, I try to update to a short title or whatever. That's going to be a problem. So it could be validation errors. And what's with the dot here? Oh, okay, because I haven't actually created any of these classes yet, so it's still giving me errors. I think that's good. So updating the article, potentially article's not there. Potentially there's validation errors, got to handle those. But assuming everything goes fine there, now I just need to go and grab the updated article. And the reason I'm just, the approach you could take with this is, well, I already have the article, updated article data in memory at this point. So I could just return that. But I still need to go look up the, if you look at the spec here, this part right here, I still need to look up the author. That's not part of the form being submitted. It would just be, yeah, there would be nothing like that submitted. So I need to go and grab this from the database anyway. So potentially a little bit of inefficiency there because I have to go grab, I'm going to grab the article, the whole article again. But Updates to the articles are relatively, my assertion is going to be relatively rare compared to getting and reading the articles. You know, an author is going to update their article, you know, maybe a couple times during a busy day, but an actual reader is going to be getting articles, you know, hundreds, thousands of times. So this is a drop in the bucket. But if, you know, this was really an issue, I could rewrite this to make it more complex, but also a little more efficient. But we're not going to worry about that. Let's get it working first. We can always refactor later, right? Especially when we've got tests in place. So I need to do a handler, update article, not a handler, but I'll start with a request, which is a I request. Yes. I request of update article response, which I haven't created yet. Public class update article response. We know we've got at least two methods that will be on there. Yes, this needs a constructor. Yep, we need to do all that. This is going to need a not found, as well as validation errors. That's not going to be that. It's going to be list of what? What is that type? Why isn't it figuring out for me? Because I haven't created any. List of validation failure. I think it's probably better to describe a validation error as a validation failure, right? It's not really an error per se. It's a user error, right? The title needs to be 50 characters and you've entered 40. That's not an error per se. It's a failure. I don't know. It's a small distinction, but I think it makes sense. Although I'm calling my method validation errors, so no. Not method, property. You know what I mean. Okay, so that's all good. So I need, of course, now a handler, class update article handler, which is I little sneeze there for you. Fortunately, I hit the mute button in time. Okay, so this is a I request handler, and we take in the request. So update article request and return update article response. This is mediator. Is where I'm getting these interfaces from, mediator. FYI, I don't think I've mentioned that in a while. I'm using a tool called Mediator, which I think is a good way to kind of decouple logic from controllers, keep controllers as thin as possible. This is getting a little bit fat, but anyway, it keeps those handlers decoupled from the logic, and it keeps data access decoupled, because I can use constructor injection here in Mediator, which could do in MVC as well. It would really balloon up these methods a lot. I'll leave it to you to decide if it's necessary. Certainly, I don't need Media. I could create my own classes separately, but yeah, I don't know. It just seems like Mediator makes stuff a little easier on me. And there are some benefits there. Of course, the real benefit of Mediator comes when you're doing stuff more complex than simple request and response. But it's totally fine to use Mediator for this if you want to. I use Mediator in my Twitch chatbot as well, and I kind of use that to a little bit more of a sort of looking for a convention, so that any number of requests coming in on the chat can be dispatched to whatever mediator it is by convention. Now, not always by convention, but sometimes. Almost empty in the dad cup. Notice that. So my daughter got this for me for Christmas. Not world's best dad. Not I love you dad. Not favorite dad. Just dad. That's me. Just dad. So just dad's got to go get a refill of the coffee, and I will be right back. after these messages. We'll be right back. All right. Yeah, you can put a retro TV overlay in there. You can do all kinds of stuff. Although the retro TV thing, that's an actual website, right? That's a. Oh, I see. You could. Okay. I was going to say retro TV is an actual, like, website, organization, or whatever. I don't necessarily want you to be taking their stuff. Although that's what I've done, of course. But yeah, if you want to put a little like CRT around it, that would be pretty fun. Yeah. Instead of the ABC, you could put my logo in there. Although again, now we're like, I don't think ABC really cares, but yeah, I don't necessarily want to erase ABC from the picture either. Surly Dev, you are welcome to do whatever you like. You have carte blanche. Yeah, you could send an email and ask if you have any contacts at ABC. Go ahead and ask them, see what they think. I don't think that they would care enough about my channel to worry about like hiring a lawyer to send a cease and desist letter, but gotta be careful with that kind of stuff these days. But knock yourself out. Do whatever you wish, and I will happily integrate it accordingly. Okay. Alrighty. So we could take a test-driven development approach with this and start building some tests. I think I'm going to do that today. I haven't done very much of that, unfortunately, but let's do it today. And this will actually give me a chance to catch up a little bit on what I was able to pull off recently. So I had this base class called Couchbase Integration Test that sets up the database, creates the collections and the indexes and everything to run the integration test. I was trying to reuse this when I was writing tests against the controller actions as well. This does a lot of stuff. This runs the migrations. It sets up Couchbase and sets up the Couchbase objects and cleans everything up. And I was having a hard time with this because if you notice here, I've got this add secrets and add environment variables stuff to pull in the connection strings and everything. When I ran these against the controller, the ASP.NET configuration was also adding its user secrets, environment variables, to the configuration. And because when I run this locally, I want to use a different database to run it than I do to run integration tests, this was causing some problems. Surly Dev, thanks for dropping by. I will see you later. Thanks again for the video clip. I appreciate it and enjoy it. So there was a conflict here. I was using two different connection strings. Yeah. Oh, believe me, Surly Dev, I talk a blue streak about you when you're not here. Maybe I'll use you in some test data. Anyway, so what I did was I finally just said, forget it. I'm going to create a different base class because I'm tired of having to deal with this conflict. So my web integration tests will have a different base class than my non-web integration tests. And this is actually much easier to do. Creating this app factory, which is one way you can test controller actions in ASP.NET. This is where I put in this stuff here. But for the rest of the configuration, everything is all just roped in from the normal configuration set up here in the program. So I don't have to worry about connecting to Couchbase, setting up Couchbase, setting up the rest of the object graph or anything. This handles all of it right here. And then I can just call in to this use service locator, which is kind of, but for tests it's fine. I use service locator to bring in all the any of the objects that I need. So for instance, if I need to connect a couch base, I pull that configuration from the web app factory. And I use that to make sure the bucket exists and the migrations are run and so on. And I can also pull in the auth service from that as well. I don't have to worry about any connections values, anything like that. It's all coming from the web project, but I'm injecting user secrets from this project into the configuration. And this works great. I had a little problem with the teardown. I had stuff in the wrong order, but no problem. This works great. So this makes it easy for me to write tests that I can run locally. They were always working fine on CI. That was no problem. But running locally was the issue for me. So they're all good now. So I'm going to go ahead and write a test using that base class. I'm going to test not the handler, but the controller. So there's a new folder here, controllers, and this is going to be the we'll create another subfolder here called articles controller tests. Yep, and then I'll have inside that a class called updates tests. These are tests that are just focused on that one endpoint. This fellow right here. Okay, so this inherits from web integration test now. The test fixture. I'm using NUnit still. I just like NUnit. Come at me. No, don't come at me. I'm going to do a little copy and pasty here just to remember how this works. So I'm just call it the base setup. That's fine. I don't necessarily need this yet. I probably do need this. No. Hang on. Rewind. I do need this because this is authenticated endpoint. So the user that's authenticating to it. Yep, no problem. Okay, and then I put authorization in the header. So this is just the setup. No problem. Well, what are you doing up there? Come on, cursor, stay with me. All right. And now my test will be, well, here's what I've been doing. I'm using Copilot to help me kind of build out these tests. You see, I was doing some work over the weekend to do this sort of thing. But here is the prompt that I'm using. Let's blow this up a little bit to break this down. So I want to create a set of NUnit integration test methods for not update user, but for update method, keeping in mind all the possible values of, okay, and I need to change that. Update article post model, which is not anything yet. Generate shells of the form, and this is C# here, test, attribute, public async task, test name, and then empty method, where test name is the snake case name of the test. Don't put any code in the methods, leave the bodies empty. So I want to create a bunch of, I want it to investigate the code and tell me what test I should write. I don't necessarily want it to write the test for me. And I'm starting to come around to the point of view that using Copilot ChatGPT to write test code itself is not a good idea. I think it's fine to write the actual code under test with ChatGPT, but I think tests can be semi-automated, like I'm doing right here, but I think the actual body of them should be written by a person. I'm starting to come to that conclusion. Now, I might be wrong, or maybe it's just like not right now, but maybe in a year or two, it'll be good. But I think this is probably the opinion I'm coming around to. Happy to entertain any alternative viewpoints on that. But so actually, because I'm doing that, I want to go ahead and update article post model. I need to fix this one. So this endpoint needs to take in title, description, body, and I also said tags, right? Public string description, public string body, and then I also said tags. So article, what was it? Article, create article, submit model, tags. So I can probably just copy all this from create. If that's for those nice little comments as well for documentation purposes. So, but all of these things in this case are optional now. They're not required for updating. Of course, one of them must be required, right? And this might be something, at least one value must be, what's the word? Specified? Specified. For at least one value must be specified. Let's just go with that. All right, Coral. The idea of having generative LLMs writing anything I expect to trust or maintain bugs me. I'm very deliberate with my code and prefer to manage it myself. Well, okay, so that's certainly a relevant, valid point of view, Coral. One of the things I'm doing on this stream is trying out ChatGPT and Copilot to write code. I've been very impressed with what they can do so far. I definitely would not trust it 100% right out of the box. But especially Copilot, what it can do with kind of analyzing the code I'm working on right now and use that as kind of a template or a guide to build more code has been very impressive. Certainly, we're not to the point yet where we can completely turn over our code base to LLMs. No. I don't think we'll ever get there. But it is a very useful code writing tool, essentially. It's I treat it like a pair programmer almost. A pair programmer that can type really fast. And it can also help me discover techniques and libraries and things that I otherwise would, not necessarily know right away. So I've been very impressed with it. In terms of trust, no, we're not there. I don't think we ever will be. But in terms of helping me understand code as well is really good. You can paste in code and say, what does this do? Describe this to me. And that's very, very useful. Context-aware Stack Overflow fueled partner. Yeah, I think that's a great way to talk about it. I don't, certainly Stack Overflow might be part of the underlying model. I'm sure there's lots of other sources as well, GitHub, lots of forums and everything like that. Maybe GitLab and other, SourceForge for all we know, which is concerning. But yeah, absolutely think of it like a Stack Overflow plus pair programmer plus really fast typer, all in one. So yeah, I think it's an extraordinarily useful tool, and I've used it to write large portions of this code base. And I have big plans for what to do with it, some other things to do with it after this project is completed, in terms of helping to compare and possibly rewrite code to use different tools, which is what I'm interested in. I'll just go ahead and say one of the things I want to try after this is complete is to take an existing implementation that uses Postgres or MySQL or SQL Server, whatever, and transform that into using Couchbase. Now, how good is it going to be at that? I don't know. That's what I want to find out, but I need to finish this project first. But I'm very interested to see how much the LLMs can do to convert. I mean, I work for a database company. We are very interested in, new projects, of course, but we're also interested in helping companies switch from whatever database they're on to Couchbase. Databases are very sticky. It's very rare that a company or project will change databases after it's already written something to use a certain database. But there are reasons you do that, right? There are cost reasons, performance reasons, capabilities and flexibility. But it's still a tough road to hoe because switching a database, moving data around is not the hard part. Moving the actual code that uses database X to database Y, that takes a lot of effort. And I'd be interested to see how well an LLM can do that. So I've got big plans for Conduit, and of course Conduit is it's potentially a great way to test that, because there's implementations for 100 different languages, frameworks, databases that I can use as kind of reference material and feed that into LLM and say, hey, here's a Postgres implementation, here's a Couchbase implementation, and maybe can you write me a prompt that can convert this one to that one, right? So using LLMs to build prompts to transform code. So I'm interested in pursuing that as kind of my next project here. But got to get through this one first. So there's my update article post model. And okay. So with that in mind, let's do a compile here real quick, make sure everything is building. So basically what I'm saying, Coral, is there are lots of reservations about using LLMs to write code, and I understand this completely, but I am, and this may be a shock to you, I'm optimistic about how useful and where these can go in terms of writing code. But I do not, there are some concern about, LLM's going to take my job. No, do not see that happening. If it does take your job, then your job was probably not particularly valuable anyway. And I know that's kind of cruel to say, but I just think that's just the fact, right? You still need to, it's a useful tool, but you still need to apply your own experience, intelligence, and communication to the code you're building, or whatever it is you're building, right? I was at a conference recently. I was talking to a software salesman, and his experience using LLMs and using Copilots for CRM tools like Dynamics and Salesforce, and how much time it saved him in terms of data entry to like getting an email from a potential customer and saying, hey, right click on this email, add this information to Salesforce or Dynamics, and it can go through and parse that email and determine, like, here's what should go in each field in the Salesforce for this contact, which would just in the past normally be, I have to look at the email on my left screen, enter the information on the right screen. A huge amount of potential error there and delay, and LM is saving so much time. But it does not replace the salesman. Notice that, or salesperson. They still have to be able to effectively communicate with customers and demonstrate value and all those sorts of things. But the LLM is taking a lot of the drudgery, the typing, the left-right work out of the job. So Coral, my gripes are around them being misconstrued as an actual artificial intelligence and issues with their opaque and sometimes unethically sourced training source data. LLMs themselves are pretty neat and are definitely useful tools for filling bits in to improve productivity. Yes, I also am concerned with the source of the data and the opaqueness. It is a concern for sure, but it's less of a concern for me because, what's the solution to that? These models have, billions of parameters at this point, something crazy like that. Even if you wanted to be transparent about it, how on earth are you going to do that? So that certainly is an issue, but I'm less concerned with that. Certainly, the source of the data is a concern for me, because as someone who might work for a company and I have sensitive information, if I use an LLM, is my sensitive information going to be used in that model and potentially then exposed somewhere else? Yeah, I'm concerned about that for sure. And then, of course, there's the idea of, put my code out there on GitHub. Is that fair game for these models? That's a whole issue that's way bigger than me, and I don't know the answer to that. I suspect that'll have to be dealt with, through some sort of opt-in or opt-out situation. Not to mention, is it Is it drawing from good code? Who knows? The actual artificial intelligence thing. So, is it artificial intelligence? By what definition, right? So, there's the whole Turing test thing. Could it pass a Turing test? Probably. Is Turing test very scientifically rigorous? No. But I think it's, to most people who are using it for the first time or just seeing, this being their first exposure to machine learning, AI type of stuff, it is extraordinary. Extraordinarily close to what most people would think of as artificial intelligence. So, is it technically, by what definition? We can discuss that, but I think I'm less concerned about that than yes, the training data is important. And if your boss fires you to use ChatGPT instead, that just means they thought you had less intelligence than an LLM, which says more about your boss and the value of your position than anything else. So if your boss fires you to use LLM instead, there's potentially two things going on here. One is the point of view that your boss thinks what your boss thinks your job is. And I think in almost any situation, the boss would be in for a rude awakening when they think they can replace you with a ChatGPT, depending on what your job is. And that's the other point of view. If your boss successfully replaced you with a ChatGPT, then what the heck were you doing? If you were that replaceable. And this is not an attack on the person, but an attack on the position. Like, that position clearly was not necessary in the first place. And, this kind of harkens back to things like the Industrial Revolution, the turn of the century, the turn of the last century, where, someone is out there harvesting wheat or corn or by hand, and they get replaced, hundreds of them get replaced by a machine. It's not that those people aren't valuable human beings. It's just that what they're doing is no longer valuable, can be replaced by a single tractor or harvester or whatever. Now, of course, that's easy to say, but at the time, it's massive upheaval, and people's lives thrown into chaos because I don't have a job anymore. Yes, that is tough. That is a difficult problem to deal with. In the long run, though, it's better for society, I think. Which is easy to say in historical context, but at the time, of course, you lost your job as a harvester? That's better for society in the long run. That's not very comforting, is it? So there are certainly multiple facets to this. Time to smash the looms. Throw those sabos in there. Yeah, exactly. So there are many real concerns about LLMs, and there are many real concerns about tractors, right? But ultimately, they are both tools. And ultimately, I don't think humans will ever be replaced completely by any particular tool. If that does happen, then I think society would be very much a lot more utopian, right? If all these tools can do stuff for us. Anyway, now we're getting this crazy speculative science fiction, Federation-style universe where food can be made out of thin air, right? And we can transport from one place to another. But anyway, okay. Where was I? Writing tests. Okay. Back to my prompt. Where's my prompt? Here we go. Throw this into Copilot, see what happens. So as you see, I've done this before. Of course, you never know with these prompts, like, is Copilot going to feel like working or not? So here we go. It's interesting that this time it creates these setup functions. I don't really want that. These teardowns, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is the ones I want. Only 3 tests, huh? Not here. So 3 tests probably because if we look at this, there's really only, there should be 4 tests, I would think. But there's 3 conditionals and, of course, the default. So let's look at these test names. All right, update article succeeds. Okay. Update article fails when model invalid. So this should probably be multiple tests. Article fails when slug not found. Yeah, well, not slug, but when article not found. And the other conditional is what? Yeah, any validation errors. You know, this seems unlikely this is ever going to happen, right? But probably should test for it anyway, right? Which would be a weird situation for the end user, right? My update succeeded, but getting it back out failed for some reason. It's also some sort of race condition, I guess, but that seems pretty unlikely to happen. If I update an article, that succeeds, then getting it back out failed. The only reason this would fail is the article's missing, or I guess, yeah, I can't think of any other reason this would fail. I mean, some situation where the user gets erased from the database, somewhere in this middle spot. Pretty unlikely, but we can test for it anyway. So update succeeds, but retrieval fails. All right, so those are the tests I want to write. I think GitHub did a pretty good job. GitHub Copilot did a pretty good job of coming up with test ideas for me. I can't think of any others that I'd want to include, so let's just go with that. We'll start with happy path. Arrange, act, assert. So the act here is going to be, is it web client? And this is a put, right? API is, or the URL is API articles slug. So this is an update, so I definitely need to have, of course, I'll have a payload .to JSON payload. Okay, but I need to have a article already in there. So I need to arrange that. So I probably need a article collection provider. Conduit articles collection provider. Collectino provider. So I need to have an article already in there. So whoopsie. And I'll create article in database with my little helper. Using all the default values, that's totally fine. Probably need, let's see. Get the article out of that. Do I need a user in there? I probably need a user. Yeah. Not user, users collection provider, create user in database. That's fine. And then I'll use that user here as the author. Okay, so that gives me an article with a user as the author, and that user actually exists in the database. All right. Okay, now I need to create the payload. Is going to be update article post model. I'll need to get a helper for that. I love doing these little helpers. Make things so much more readable. But it is a little bit of an annoying thing to actually have to type them out. I haven't figured out a prompt yet that will help me create these helpers. I've tried a few prompts and they're just kind of so-so. So we got an ad break happening right now for everyone who is not a subscriber. That'll be over in about 3 minutes. I thought it was supposed to give me a warning, like countdown to ad break and then ad break in progress. It's just going to ad break in progress. So whatever. Public static post model creates. Wait, is this DTO? Yeah, this is DTO. Okay. So model equals new update article post model, return model. There we go. Okay. Fortunately, there's not many things in this post model, right? So it's model dot title, string, nullable string, title equals null. And then we say title. If it's null, make this well, I need random, don't I? Random equals new random. Make this some sort of random string of, I don't know, 20 characters. Seems good enough. Next one, model dot body. Same sort of thing here. Body needs to be bigger. Let's make that 256 characters. What aren't you happy with here? Huh? Oh, got a space. Okay. All right. Model dot description equals description. Actually, let's make this a little bigger. Let's make this 2048. That's more realistic for a body, I think. String description is null. And for description, let's make that one, I don't know, 100 characters. Why not? Why does it keep adding space? Am I doing that? And then tags. Model.tags, which is not in the spec, but I think it needs to be here. That's a list of string. And tags. Give that a, I don't know, couch base. Gamlore, how's it going? Popping in for 15 minutes. You need to get a haircut after that. All right. Thanks for joining, Gamlore. Good to see you. Why doesn't it like this? Because it needs to be null as well. There we go. Couch base and cruising. Those are two of my normal tags. So, all right. That helper's done. So for slug, I need to get article. Welcome back from the break, everybody. I need that helper for payload. Yep. So what I just did during the break was I created this little mother pattern helper, which will create a object in memory with reasonable default values that can be overridden if I want to. I've created those also for these helper methods as well. These are extension methods. These actually hit the database. So I'm creating a user, all randomized values, default values, whatever. Article, all randomized, except I want it to point to that particular user. So I'm overriding the author username there. And then creating the payload. This is the actual values that are going to be passed in to the API endpoint. Again, those are all just kind of random values. I'm updating the existing article. So this is why I needed to create it in the first place. I'm going to update an article. So there's the slug. And then pass the payload into JSON. So this should not ask, it should be assert. So we need to assert that response.status code is equal to, was it HTTP status code? .ok. All right. So this test will fail. Actually, let me take this off screen here real quick. So I'm not sure which database is going to connect to. So I need to look at the user secrets. Okay, let's connect to my local database. That's fine. We'll keep using local for now. Although Capella is what I'm also using Couchbase DBAS, database as a service. But right now, locally I've got running, I don't have it running actually, so let's go ahead and kick that off. A Docker container containing Couchbase server, single node of Couchbase server. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So this is my local Couchbase server. It's the same API as Couchbase DBAS from a developer's point of view. But I've got in here Conduit, which is the bucket I'm using for the web project if I'm running it locally, and integration test, which is where I run all the automations, such as the one I'm about to write or about to run. So this test should fail because it's not actually, I actually implemented everything yet. So this is probably going to give me a not implemented exception. But that's part of the TDD structure is you write a test, see it fail, make it pass, and then you know that the test is a good test. And you can refactor after that, of course. So what this test is actually doing is it's actually spinning up kind of a in-memory ASP.NET server, which can take, in this case, a put request. It's got internal server error. Oh, that's interesting. Why is it internal server error? That's weird. Well, I didn't expect that. I expected a not implemented exception, but let's go ahead and run this, step through and debug here. Gambler, what kind of haircut are you going to get? Going for the mohawk? Going for the completely bald look? What's your go-to haircut? Okay, so there's that. So we're in the endpoint. You can see here that this is the model that was submitted with all the kind of the fake data that's in there, randomly generated data. There's the slug, also randomly generated. So there's the request article. Oh, right there is where it should fail, right? Right there in that constructor. There's not one exception. So just some short haircut. Don't really care as long as I'm good again for a few months. Yeah, same thing. See, this is I had a haircut last week. Very short cut. Keep it short. Okay, so I need to actually put some stuff into this request. So that would include this dot title, right? Equals model dot title. This dot body equals model dot body. This dot description equals model dot description. This dot tags equals model dot tags. And this dot slug equals model dot slug. So here I'm actually, or not model dot slug, slug. Here I'm actually kind of consolidating these two different sets of inputs here. And I'm using ReSharper to create all these for me. They don't need to be public set though. There's no reason for that. So we'll get rid of those. And I like to put those on top of the constructor. Just my personal preference. Okay, there we go. All right, so the test is still going to fail. All right, because it's not actually doing anything other than throwing an exception. But at least that part should succeed. Just to prove the point, we'll go ahead and run this in debug mode. Have you ever gotten a really wild haircut before, Gambler? Or something outside the ordinary? This is probably the wildest my hair's ever gotten is really short like this. Like it used to be, I'd have a little longer, but cutting it really super short. Okay, so this constructor should pass. This is where it should fail now. With a, I don't know why it sets a breakpoint over there, of all the weird things. Okay, and so, again, internal server error. So, I'm guessing that's what the ASP.NET is throwing. It's not turning around and throwing me the same exception. It's throwing its own internal server error exception, which makes sense. Never did much with your hair. Yeah, me neither. I think I've colored it before. That's about the wildest I've gotten as well. Not a haircut, but just putting red coloring in there. done that once, twice, maybe. And of course, I grew out my facial hair for a year and a half, 2 years, and I colored that as well for Christmas time. I colored it with like a bright white, very light gray color, like a Santa Claus type of look. Okay, so we're back here to this. So this request is good. I don't think there's anything you need to change there. You need to actually make the handler do something. So this is going to await. I need a data service. Article data service. Okay, that gets automatically injected. I need to await. What's going on? Oh, this needs to be async. Gosh. Await data service. I'm going to do an update. And I could just pass the request right into it, right? There's no reason to create a second object, is there? Or should I put the logic in here? And pass it. Yeah, I think that's what I should do. I should pass in an article entity. So create article, new article, and data model. So article. So I actually need to compare to the previous one, especially for the title, right? So I need to get the old article out. Or maybe current article is a better way to describe it. And this is going to be another await articles data service dot get, and I'm just going to go by the slug, which is not something that they're changing. So I can, yeah, that's fine. Okay.